welcome to another Checiegirl Creations DIY video. So today I'll be doing a journal spread in the Friendship Art Journal, and I'm just showing you a couple pages. The last two were by my best friend Jessica, who I share this journal with, and the first one with the face was by me, and I'll link to that video in an iCard in the top right hand corner. And I'll also link to the playlist where you'll be able to see how I created this journal. I have a few parts of that if you would interesting to see how I created this. And basically the journal is for both Jess and I to either experiment in it, challenge each other, or to just have fun. And sometimes we put things in this little envelope that's in the front that each other can use in future pages. So first I'm starting off just adding some texture, mostly visual texture, because masking tape and washi tape are quite flat, and the masking tape I think I get from Poundland. That gold spotty one is from The Works, and that black polka dot one is from Poundland, and the others I put on from Michael's. Oh, that one sorry, was in a mixed media subscription kit, which I provide myself via the links below, and the June box is available to pre-order, so you can check that out in those links below. And I think that was in the September kit. So that cog one, like with the gears, is from the June kit as well. So I'm just adding some different washes. I'm not really sure what colors I'll be using, but I did think I would use like blues and greens and purples. Like that's pretty much my favorite color combination. I always go to that. And I'm sticking on some tissue paper using some PVA glue in a few different places to just add a little bit more texture, but not too much. I didn't want it to be too like lumpy. Lumpy isn't the best word to describe it, but I just wanted it to be quite a subtle texture. And I'm using some clear chalk primer, which was almost done, which is why I'm using a palette knife, and you can get that in the September box. And I'm using some chalk primer. You can also get that in the December box, and of course all those links are below, just to add some more texture and to prime the page, because that is just plain old lined paper. And I do make those myself as well. So that's like a homemade product. So now I'm sketching in a face, and I tend to start with the features. I would recommend for a beginner to start with the shape of the face, but I'm used to drawing faces now, so I just start with the features, and you can see I didn't get them in the right spot, so I just rubbed it off. It's like a Derwent 6B pencil, so it's quite easy to like smudge off and just go back over. So I'm giving her face, neck, a little bit of her shoulders, and some hair. So now for the paint. Now that purple paint is from the December box, and I can't remember the proper name. I wasn't really paying attention too much what colors I was using. I was just kind of slapping it on. I think mauve or something. Well, anyway, so that's a purple color, and I'm using my fingers to apply and blend the paint. That's my favorite way of blending paint if I wanted to be not too much of a thick layer. Otherwise I would use something like a palette knife, because that adds a really nice texture. And that is Viridian, and that is a Reeves paint. And that blue paint there is by Crawford and Black, and you can get that from The Works. Well, I think you can still get it from The Works. I've had it for a while, and I put quite a bit on there, and you can see I'm not using my palette, which is right there next to me. I am just applying it straight to the page and just spreading it around where I want it. And again, just using my fingers. If you don't like to get paint on your fingers, because I know it can be a little bit annoying if it gets all up in your nails. Oh, that light blue is from the June box. And again, that's like the same brand from the purple paint. You can use gloves. I don't like using gloves. I quite like to feel the paint and to just use my bare hands, but you can use gloves so that you can get this kind of look without dirtying your hands. And I'm just wiping off my finger with a paper towel whenever I want to change color. So now I'm using this fluorescent pink. Again, that's a Reeves paint, same brand as the Viridian. And I put out quite a lot of paint, a little bit more than I would have wanted, but then that worked out fine because that's quite a light color. And I did want to add a little bit more of that just to kind of break up some of the blue because it was getting really heavy with the blue. And now I'm using that, I believe it's light yellow green. And that, oh, I can't remember the name of the brand now, but I'm just using that to add a little bit of a difference because again, it was just too much blue, which I never thought I would say, but it just did look really blue heavy. So I'm just using that to break up a few spots. And now I'm using that, it's like a cool yellow. And I don't normally use cool yellow, but I thought it would look quite nice on the background, but I didn't want to add any like smudges like I did before. So I'm just using my fingers to add some marks. And your fingers are really good for adding marks. You can really use your hands as tools if you like, especially in mixed media, just add some really nice visual texture. So I'm just adding that in a few spots, and that's also a really nice way to just kind of lighten up the page. It was getting a little bit dark as well with some of those colors. So what am I going to do next? I'm just cleaning my fingers. Okay, so now I'm going to use these stamps. I can't tell you where I got them from. My friend just gave them. They were just some old stamps she got from somewhere. They didn't come in any packaging, so I don't know the brand. And I'm just using my Stays On ink pad, which is permanent, which is why I like to use it in my mixed media, because I can't smudge it after it's dry, because it's like an alcohol ink based stamp pad. And I'm just using that. It's a bit like some kind of lace, but it reminds me more of like henna. So I'm just stamping that in a few different places. And then I also use that like mandala stamp as well. And I'm using that now, and I'm stamping that in a few places. And you can see that I'll go over like some spots on her hair. And that's fine because once I paint in the hair, all that will be covered over, which is why I wasn't too precious with her outline either. I was letting the paint go over a little bit so that it wouldn't look like there was like harsh lines in between. And now I'm just using those they're like little stars just to add a little bit more. I thought it looked like it was missing stamping, even though I'm putting on a lot. And again, I can't tell you where I got that from. That did not come in the packaging. So, and I'm just wiping that off. I don't worry too much with cleaning my stamps after using Stays On because it does dry permanent. So it was looking quite dark. I'm just going to give you a quick look there. And I'm adding that black as a contrast because I had all those bright colors. But as I said before, it was looking quite dark. So I'm using that white paint by Sea White. Oh, that cool yellow was also by Sea White, forgot to mention that. And I'm using just some bubble wrap that I cut and stuck onto some, like a scrap piece of cardboard as a stamp, and that brightened it up a lot and added some more contrast with like the black stamping, and I really liked how that turned out. And I was also like second generation stamping that as well, just to add some more texture. It's all about the texture in mixed media, and sometimes if you don't want to add like too much layers, you can just add visual texture like I was doing before. So now I'm going to add back the details, and I'm doing this with a permanent pen because I'm going to start painting her face, and I didn't really want to lose the features to have to sketch it back in again. So I am just using that marker to make everything stronger because I won't be going on with a thick layer of paint when I paint her face. And I do let that dry for just a little bit so that it won't smudge when I add paint. So now I'm using this paint by Crawford & Black, and again this is from the Works, same brand as that blue one. And I'm filling in her face. Now first I was trying to avoid her features, but then I decided that actually I wanted to make her face black and white. And I've never done that before that I remember, so I thought this would be a nice way to change things up a bit and experiment. So I'm going over completely, but because of that black marker, I'm not losing the detail. And I'm painting both her face, neck, and upper body with the white paint, but I didn't add any shade into the upper body because I will do something different with that later. So I put some black on my palette off to the side, and I'm just using this small round brush, and both brushes I'm using here are by Sea White as well. And I'm using this round brush to add black, and the flat brush to blend everything out. So I'm just adding in shadows, and I'm not adding too much black. I didn't want to overpower it and make it too dark. And I'm just going lightly and adding dark where I need to mostly because I've never really done this before. But it's the same principle when you're doing anything. You just have to use darker colors for shading, lighter colors for highlights. And I have done like a colorful face before, and it's really the same principle. I'll actually link to that process so that you can see how I did that. And I thought it would be a good idea to make her face black and white because the background was so bright and busy. It needed to be able to stand out, and I thought this would be a perfect way to do that by just giving her neutral colors. So black and white for the face, and then you'll see that for her upper body it'll be a neutral color, and so will her hair. So now I'm just filling in her hair with the leftover white paint since I'm now finished with the face. And you can see it wasn't too hard. It was just all about blending and adding shadows where I wanted it to be. And the light was coming from the right. Well, what I imagined it coming from the right. So all the shadows were mostly on the left side of her face. So now I'm just adding in some detail with my round paintbrush, and again all her features except for her lips will be black, white or grey. So I'm adding in the pupils there, and you will see me like adjusting just a little bit with her eyes, because a lot of the time when I put in the first quick sketch, because it really is just a quick sketch, I'm just slapping on those features, making sure that the proportions are right, and that's pretty much it. I do have to then make sure that everything does look right and it's the right size and is like in the right place once I'm adding paint. And now her iris, I hope I'm using those right. Yeah, I am using the right words, is grey, and I'll also be adding like a little bit of detail using the black paint and just like blending it, but I'll be like dabbing the paintbrush on. And I didn't use a black fine liner or a white Uniball Signal gel pen for highlights. I just use acrylic paint. I like to challenge myself in just adding highlights and shadows with acrylic paint now, and I really like the look. So you can see now I'm just starting to make like the pupil look a little bit fuzzy around the edge because I will start to add some details in the iris. And I'm just dabbing the tip of the paintbrush very gently so that it's not like too stark and it's quite subtle. So you can see I'm adding those details and I'm outlining the iris as well. And I won't give her like a she'll have like an eyelid at the top but not at the bottom, because I was going to add it in, but then afterwards I decided against it. I quite liked it without, because I did make sure and make the whites of her eyes quite white so that you can see the difference between her skin tone and her eyes. So that was able to stand out enough. But if I didn't do that, then I would have added a line so that you can see that like that was her under eyelid. So now I'm adding some highlights using this liner brush I got from Hobbycraft. I'm not sure which size it is. It might be 1 or something. I got size 1, 2 and 3, so I'm never really sure which ones I'm using in the video. I just picked one up and I'm just using that to add in some highlights in her eyes. And again, I am just dabbing in that color. And I'm just using plain white paint there. So now I picked up some black paint and I've watered it down just a little bit, not so like it's like a watercolor, but just thin enough so that it runs quite smoothly when I'm using it with the brush. And I'm adding all the details back in using the liner brush. And I can't stress how much a liner brush has helped me adding details with acrylics and watercolors or just anything when I'm painting. Normally I would just try to make do with the round brushes I have, but this liner brush is so fine that it can add details like a pen, and I'm really happy I made that investment. I just bought the 3 of them when Hobbycraft was having like a 20% off like art sale, and I'm so happy that I did that. It just makes life so much easier. Like her eyelashes just look so good just because I was using that liner brush. So if you want to do like more painting and you want to add quite a few details, I would definitely recommend getting a liner brush. It makes life a lot easier. So now you'll see I start to struggle. The left eye is always a struggle. I don't know if it's because just I'm right-handed and maybe left-handed people struggle with the right eye. If you're a left-hander and you like sketch faces and stuff, let me know in the comments. Do you struggle more with the right eye and but I struggle with the left eye, let me know. And you'll see that her eyelashes are different on the left, and I will have to fix that later on, and you'll see how I'll do that. So I've just put in her nose, and now I'm going to use this Rose Madder. I'm actually glad I showed you the color this time. I got a little bit too excited and just kind of went in the flow of things with the background. And I'm using my round brush to add in some lip color. And I do love to give my girls red lipstick. I think the only time I haven't given them red lipstick is when it was like pink, but that might have just been once. So it's just a really nice contrast, especially with her black and white face. It just pops, and I really like how that looked, and especially since the background was more of a cool color base, it just did pop a lot. So now I'm going to add some blush. Now I really should have watered down the red a little bit more, and you'll see me having to really work hard in blending it in because it dried quite quickly, even though I didn't even wait to add on the white paint. But it all ended fine, and yes, you can still kind of see the splotches, but I will be giving her freckles in a little bit, so that'll cover it up. But that did look quite nice. It made her face look a little bit more natural, to see like the blush not perfectly blended in there on her cheeks, and I used the same red for that. But it was just a very subtle blush. You can see it a little bit more in the photos, but it's not very strong. So now I'm adding the detail to her lips, again using that liner brush and the black paint that's a little bit watered down. And I'm just going around there, and you can see how much adding detail makes everything pop. And especially when you add highlights, it just blows my mind. Adding highlights to anything just makes it look 10 times better. So if you're like struggling with a piece, you're not too sure what's going on, add some highlights, whether it's a pen, whether it's paint, anything, just add a few highlights, because you can see now her lips stand out a lot more, and they look a little bit more real, like you can see where the light would hit them. And I'm adding some highlight on her nose, like where the light would hit it, and like on the bridge of her nose where it'll also hit that there, and some on her eyelid. Just trying to add some more detail, and just to make sure to make it look not realistic, obviously, but real enough so you can see that's definitely a face. And now I'm adding a little bit more shadows. I felt like I had kind of blended it out a little bit too much. And when I added the blush, especially on the left side, it just made it just look too bright. So I'm just adding some shadows there, and just a tidge over, under her right eye, but just a tidge. Or is that her left eye? Nope. Left eye? Yes, that is actually her left eye. So I struggle with the right eye. Here's the wheeze. I'm getting confused. It looks left when I look at it, but really it's her right eye. I probably will get corrected there in the comments. Never mind. I corrected myself. So now I'm covering up her faulty eyelashes just with some white paint and then some black to add those shadows again. And I was just kind of carrying on the shadows so there wasn't a harsh line. And I'm adding the whites to her eyes, so now you can see that they stand out a lot more, which is why I didn't add her underlid. Bottom lid? Why am I struggling with words today? Oh, it's late and my brain's just not working. So, and again, I covered that with some more white paint by her eyelashes because it was quite dark, and I'll come back to that later. And I'm just adding some more highlights to her neck. I didn't really work on that much, so I'm just going in and blending things out a little bit more. So what am I going to do now? Okay, her eyebrows. So first I'm just adding the shape of the eyebrow with just that one line, and then I'll go in and finish that off with the liner brush again. Perfect for eyebrows as well. I cannot stress how much I love that brush. I actually treat it a lot better than my other brushes, which are slightly abused, and I'm just so happy with it. I love it. So I'm just adding that, and just little strokes as I go along. And then again, I don't know if I should call it the right side or the left side, because now I'm confused myself. And I'm not doing it on the other side just yet, just because I'm just waiting to fix her eyelashes, and once I do that, I'll add the eyebrows. So I'm adding the freckles, and I'm sorry I'm a bit out of frame there. And some of them are smaller than the others, and some of them are a little bit bigger. I didn't want them to all look the same. I'm just doing that by dabbing it. And I thought I would give her a beauty spot, but I do change my mind later. And I'm going to, okay, I'm fixing her left side, right side again. Just blending that out. And I'm just dabbing some white over her freckles. I just thought they looked a little bit strong. So I'm just doing that just to kind of blend them in a little bit, and I thought that looked a lot better because they just stood out a little bit too much. And now I'm covering up her beauty spot because I regretted that. And you can see I've smudged it, but I do fix it later on. So now I'm going to add some freckles on that side. Oh, okay, sorry, I did lose that footage. I completely forgot. I lost the footage of me fixing like the next side, but basically what I did was I turned her upside down and painted the eyelashes and did her eyebrows upside down because it was just easier that way. My hand was able to do the things I'm able to do on the other side. And yes, it doesn't look symmetrical or as perfect as the other side, but it did look good enough so that it could pass. And I'm still happy with how that came out. So now I was talking about giving her like a neutral upper body, and first I was going to like paint it as if she was just kind of wearing a kind of a top, but like a strapless top, that's the word. But then I actually decided to give her a jumper, which is why I was cutting that book paper. And basically her shoulders were too small as well for the size of her head, so I made the book paper a lot bigger. And the book paper was previously sprayed with some coffee ink, no, not coffee ink, it's basically I took some coffee, I mixed it with water, made my own spray, and that's why it's that color. So I was just cutting that out, and you can see now the proportions look a lot better, and her shoulder shape is a lot better as well. And I was just adding some outlines to the outside of her face and her neck to finish that off before I added the top. And the collar went up quite high, so she ended up having a jumper, which kind of fitted because her hair is blowing in the wind, so maybe it was like a breezy day. And now I had drawn everything and sketched out everything on the back of the paper, so I'm just using my phone to kind of shine through. I didn't need it to be too strong because I did use like a marker to do that. So I'm just drawing in the lines where I'm going to add paint for details later on. I'm just using a HB pencil, I think that is. And now I'm going to stick it all down, and you can see the pen marks on the back there. And I'm using quite a thick like PVA glue, and you can see how much longer it is compared to what I previously sketched for her upper body. And that's what you really want to make sure and do. You want to make sure to have the proportions right, because otherwise it would have looked odd for her to have such a big head and a small body, which is why I made her shoulders a lot broader. And I like how much that looked a lot more, because you know when you're looking at something but you're not too sure what's up with it, but then you finally realize that's what happened. And the book paper was the perfect size for me to cut out. So that's all stuck on, and you can see how much better that looks, and it looks really nice up against that really bright background. And normally I do put like glue over top of what I just glued down, but I felt like I didn't need to this time, and I didn't really want to. I wanted it to stay matte. So now I'm going to use my black paint and liner brush again to add the outlines to her jumper, and as well the detail of her collar. And because of the book paper with the text adding a pattern already, I didn't feel the need to add anything to the rest of the jumper, just the collar, so that you can see it's a jumper and just not like a regular top. Otherwise the collar would have been a lot lower. So I'm just adding that in, I'm doing this very slowly as well. This video is very sped up. If I didn't speed it up, it would come up to like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of footage. So I'm going very slow with the brush. So if you think that you have to go fast, don't at all. I'm going very slow, and I do turn the page as well sometimes if the angle of my hand doesn't feel right. So now onto her hair. Now I thought I would paint her hair like a kind of neutral color, a little bit like the jumper, which is why I'm now gessoing it using some Galleria white gesso. And gesso is a primer, just in case you didn't know that. That's what like your canvases come primed as, so that it's ready for you to work on. And that's by Winsor and Newton, and you can get that in Hobbycraft and The Range, I believe. Those are the shops I know you can get it in. You can also get gesso in The Works, but this is a really nice thick gesso. And normally I do use my chalk primer, which I make myself and sometimes provide in the mixed media boxes. But the chalk primer has a bit of it's a little bit of a like a gritty, like chalky texture. And I didn't really feel like having a chalky texture on this page for her hair, which is why I'm using the just plain old white gesso. But in the end, I did actually keep her hair white. So you'll see I add quite a few layers of gesso. And I'm just going in at the moment and making sure that I like the shape of her hair, the way it looks, how much it is. I apologize for it going in and out of focus. It doesn't like focusing on a white background, and there's just so much white at the moment in frame, the camera doesn't like it. So you can see I'm just making sure and going over any of the lines of where it's darker, and just kind of like evening things out and making sure I like the shape of her hair and the way it looks. And that brush I'm using there comes with the December box as well, and I quite like that for applying gesso. It's quite a firm brush, and that's just perfect, I find, for applying gesso. And I'm adding some more gesso on the edge, mostly because I have made her hair a little bit bigger than it was first sketched out, so I'm going over paint. So you can see how bright and how much that makes everything stand out, and I really like how that looked, though I did leave it for a couple days just to make sure I like the look of her hair before I left it just white like that. So now that that's dry, I'm going to add some highlights onto her top. And I'm using some white again with my liner brush, and I'm just adding that to some spots on her jumper. And I'll also do it like on the collar as well, because I'm thinking if like the light's hitting it, it might hit some areas on the collar. So I'm adding it there, but just very lightly. And because like the coffee spray isn't permanent, I think it was picking up some of the coffee spray, so it wasn't a very stark highlight, which meant I then had to go over in a few spots just to make it a little bit stronger. Though in some spots I did quite like it was a subtle highlight. So you can see I'm just adding some highlights at the top there. And I could have used like the gesso and just watered it down a little bit to be able to use it, but I didn't want to do that. I just used my acrylic paint, but I didn't have to water it down. It was not thin, but like movable enough that it would work without any water. It would also be stronger as well if I didn't add water. So adding more highlights to her face and neck, over her eyebrows, just in different spots like that. And you can see constantly I'm always just adding more highlights, adding more details wherever I think I need it. And I'm adding stronger highlights on her cheeks as well, because like the light does hit your cheekbones, which is why I'm adding that there. And I'm sorry I'm sniffling. My allergies are acting up quite a bit over the past few weeks. So now I'm adding another layer of gesso, and I think I did add a few layers like off camera as well, because it's just me doing the same thing. I think by the end of this, she either has three or four layers of gesso for her hair, just mostly because there was just some really strong parts of color where I just needed to add some more, or it was like, or I just needed to like reshape her hair as well, because I did do some adjusting while I was adding the layers as well. Sorry. So I'm using my flat brush and that round brush from the mixed media box to add some more gesso. So I'm just adding. And while I'm doing that, I would like to tell you that you can see all the behind the scene photos of like this piece or future pieces on my Instagram page and my Facebook group. On my Facebook group, you can share your artwork. I share my artwork. I share the behind the scenes of Checiegirl Creations. So if you want to see the behind the scenes, please do follow me on Facebook. Like my Facebook page. You'll see like any like new products and stuff there. Join my Facebook group where you'll see the behind the scenes and as well get exclusive discounts just for you guys in the group. And if you're not on Facebook, please do follow me on Instagram where you can see the behind the scenes of my work as well. And if you do share anything that you've been inspired by my videos, do tag me as well. I would love to see your artwork. So now I'm doing one of my favorite things to do on a journal page, adding making the edges of the page really pop and finishing it off. I feel this does, and this is just by literally just rubbing the edge of the page with my Stays On ink pad, again using that because it's permanent. And you can see I didn't do the hair because it wasn't just dry yet. And some areas I do it slightly neatly and then some a little bit more grungier just because just to add a little bit more like difference so it doesn't look too like samey. So now I'm putting back the outlines to her face because of course it did get covered up when I was doing her hair. And you do see that I do make the lines a little bit thicker. I thought that just made her face pop a little bit more. And you can see how much of a contrast that hair makes, and it really breaks apart the background as well. I was thinking of making her hair black, but then when I added the white, I was just hit by the contrast and how bright it looks and how much she popped. And I just really like that, how it just kind of stretched along the page, and I thought that added a really good look. So I'm now finishing off with those outlines. And I'll also add an outline to her hair as well. And you can see I'm turning the book around because just like say fussy cutting, it's a lot easier to turn the page while adding outlines so that your hand doesn't get in like an awkward position. Then you might make a mistake that you might regret, especially with something like black. It's so strong. Yes, I could put gesso on it, but it'll take a lot of layers, and I've already added a lot of layers on her hair. And another note I wanted to add before I finish is that I let all of this air dry. I can heat gun it, but I wanted to let it air dry because I didn't want anything to bubble up. I didn't want that kind of texture, though of course if you're impatient like me, feel free to let it air dry. Not air dry, sorry, do it with a heat gun. There's nothing wrong with it bubbling. And if you heat it slowly, it won't bubble. You just have to like keep the heat gun quite far from the page and heat it slowly as you go along. So that's pretty much coming to the end of it. I'm just adding some more outlines and finishing things off. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed creating this page. I can't tell you how much I love her. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and click that bell next to the subscription button so that you can get notified whenever I upload a video. So thanks again for watching. Please do check out my mixed media boxes in the link below so you can get your very own art kit. And I'll see you in another video. Bye!